Hi guys, in this lens shootout, we're going to be comparing two of Canon's premium zoom lenses, the Canon RF 24-70 f2L versus the Canon 28-70 f2, to work out what one is deserving for a spot in your camera bag as a photographer, but also as a hybrid shooter. And I'm going to start right now. So just before we start this lens shootout, I just want to say that I have reviewed both of these lenses in my in-depth review series. So if you're just interested to find out more information about the 24-70, go ahead to the link in the description, find this video here. Or if you're just interested in watching more information about the 28-70, I've got my in-depth review just here. But in today's video, we're going to be comparing the two to really work out what one is the ultimate standard zoom lens. So let's kick this lens shootout off, firstly talking about the overall build quality and the design of each two of these lenses. To be honest with you, these are very similar when it comes to the build quality and the design. There's only a few real differences between them. The 24-70 has an extra switch just for image stabilisation, as the 28-70 does not have that, and it's got a few more optics. So the 24-70 has 21 elements in 15 groups, where the 28-70 has 19 elements in 13 groups. And that's just due to the optical stabilisation of the 24-70. But both of these have lens hoods in the box. Both of them come with a premium plastic and metal construction, and both of them have weather sealing. So to be honest with you, these are both exceptional built lenses, and both of them scored a 10 out of 10 in my tests when it comes to the overall build quality. So both of them are getting a check mark in this round. Okay, so let's move on to the overall image quality and start off talking about image sharpness. Now, both of these lenses are incredibly sharp, but which one is sharper? So let's have a look at side by side. So let's start off at f2. As you can see, obviously, the 24-70 does not shoot at f2. So as you can see, let's have a look at the 28-70 first. We can see there is really good sharpness straight out of the gate, wide open at f2. Same with the center and also in the corners at f2, although there's a little bit less contrast, I would say, than the center. So let's step down to f2.8, where we can actually compare these lenses. So wide open for the 24-70, there's a real good amount of sharpness, but the 28-70 at f2.8 is just that little bit sharper in the center and also in the corners. So let's step down to f4. Now this is where these lenses really they're so similar. I had to really zoom in and really see the difference. I would say the 28-70 is just that little bit sharper, but it's so difficult to tell on this YouTube video. And then if we go to the corners, you'll notice that the 24-70 is a little bit darker, but they are very, very similar. So let's step down to f5.6. Let's go to the center first. We can see there's almost no difference. In fact, at this particular aperture, I would say there's no difference between these two lenses, and it's the same situation when we go to the corners, and it's the same situation at f8, and also the same situation at f11. Really, the only real difference I could find is if we step down to f16, I would say the 24-70 is just that little bit softer thanks to diffraction, although again, they are very, very good in that regard. So out of the two, I would definitely say the 28-70 is just that little bit sharper, but it's so difficult to tell. You've got to be happy with both image sharpness of both the 24 and the 28-70. But in this round, the 28-70 goes for the win. Right, moving on to distortion and vignetting. So if we have a look wide open at f2, we can see, obviously the 28-70 shoots f2, we can see there's almost no distortion whatsoever and a small amount of vignetting wide open at f2. Then if we step down to f2.8, we can see there's actually a decent amount of barrel distortion with the 24-70, which is just not noticeable on the 28-70 with a little bit more vignetting. Now we can remove that vignetting on the 24-70 by stepping down to f4 and then disappearing at f5.6. But it's a very good score for the 28-70 at its widest focal range. So let's go ahead and zoom in to 70 millimeters. Now, as you can see at f2, almost no distortion and no vignetting to be seen on the 28-70. So let's step down to f2.8. Now you can see on the 24-70, there is a little bit more pincushion distortion than the 28-70 and a little bit more vignetting, although it is actually quite good for this. Then if we step down to f4, we can push that vignetting right into the corners, and both lenses scored really high at f5.6 with pretty much no vignetting. But Out of the two, the 28-70 definitely scored higher when it comes to distortion and vignetting. A very flat profile at 28 and 70mm and almost no vignetting to be seen, and both of these have corrections turned off. So really, the optical performance of that 28-70 is amazing when it comes to distortion vignetting, although the 24-70 is not that far behind. So out of the two, the 28-70 wins this round. Right, so moving on to macro. Now, both these lenses are not a dedicated macro lens, but let's just have a look at the minimum focus distance and the maximum reproduction ratio. The 24-70 has a 21cm minimum focus distance with a 0.3 times maximum reproduction ratio, where the 28-70 has a 39cm minimum focus distance with a maximum reproduction ratio of just 0.18. Now, this means if you're a wedding photographer, for example, like myself, and you want to take some just standard establishing shots, but then quickly focus on the rings without swapping to a dedicated macro lens, the 24-70 allows you to get that a little bit closer, as well as allowing you to blow up the image a little bit larger. And it's not a massive difference, and both of these lenses, grant you, are definitely not dedicated macro lenses, but out of the two, I would definitely recommend the 24-70 if you're after a more versatile lens that allows you to get that a little bit closer to your subject. So the 24-70 wins this round. So moving on to chromatic aberration and color fringing. This is where you can sometimes get some purple or green fringes on the edge of high contrast edges. So if we go ahead and take these sample images here, the one is the 24-70 and the other is the 28-70. Now, if we go ahead and zoom into 600%, you can see both these lenses scored really high, but you can see that the 28-70 has a lot less chromatic aberration than the 24-70, but you really have to zoom in to see the difference. So both of these lenses, to be honest, are scored really high, but the 28-70 is just that much little bit better. So because of that, that's what wins this round. Okay, so moving away from the overall image quality, let's actually have a look at the size and weight of these lenses, and let's have a look at size first. Now, as you can imagine, the 28-70 is considerably larger than the 24-70, just thanks to that f2 aperture. It pretty much lets in double the amount of light than the f2.8 lens. And we can see that by the size. Looking at the chart here, you can see how much larger that 28-70 is. And it's the same situation when we look at filter thread size. The 24-70 comes in at a filter thread of 82mm, which is the largest standard filter thread that you can get. It's actually quite handy if you want to get filters. They're fairly abundant. There's quite a few out there, but the 28-70 has a 95mm filter thread, which means you're going to have to really shop around and find if you're after a filter anyway, you're going to really have to shop around to find a perfect filter, and it's going to cost considerably more than a 24-70. So there's a definite winner for this round. That's the 24-70. And related to size is weight. How much do these lenses weigh? And let's say you're a travel photographer or maybe a destination wedding photographer, are they going to take up a lot of weight in your camera bag? Well, both of them aren't exactly light lenses, but one is considerably heavier than the other. The 24-70 comes in at 900 grams, so just under a kilogram, where the 28-70, again, thanks to that f2 aperture, comes in at 1.43 kilograms. So over 500 grams heavier than the 24-70. So if size and weight is an issue, the 24-70 is definitely going to be better off, especially if you're a destination wedding photographer and you're carrying it around. Let's say you've got a certain amount of room in your luggage. You don't want to be lugging around all of that heavy glass. So 24-70 is the one that I recommend, and that is what wins this round. Okay, so moving on to the autofocus and the focus motor of both of these lenses. Now, both of these lenses have a dual nano USM or ultrasonic motor, and both of them are incredibly quick, incredibly precise, and really accurate, even in a low light environment. So here is my test on the 24-70 f2.8. You can see it is almost instantaneous on its focus. And then let's step over to the 28-70, and it's a very similar story. In fact, I really struggled to find a difference between the 24 and the 28-70. Both of these lenses, including my real world review, I found really fast and really accurate. So because of that, both of them are getting a check mark in this round. So related to autofocus is the image stabilisation, and this is an easy one to work out. The 24-70 comes with optical stabilisation built in, and you can turn it off and on thanks to the switch on the side of the lens, where the 28-70 does not have optical stabilization and relies on, basically depends on what camera you're shooting with. If you're shooting on an older Canon EOS R, you've got no stabilization whatsoever. But if you use some of the more modern Canon mirrorless cameras, like the R3 or the camera I'm using today, the Canon EOS R5, you'll be able to rely on the camera's IBIS. That's the in-body image stabilization. So out of the two, if you're a hybrid shooter, maybe you want to shoot in more low lit environments with lower shutter speeds, or you're interested in doing some video work, maybe some filmmaking, the 24-70 is the obvious choice. And that is what wins this round. And last but not least is the overall price of both of these lenses. Now, to be honest with you, most Canon RF lenses are expensive, and these are definitely on the very expensive side, both coming in well over £2,000, but there is a slight difference in price between them. The Canon RF 24-70 f2.8 comes in at £2,629, where the Canon RF 28-70 f2L comes in at a whopping £3,299, so a lot more expensive. But to be honest with you, neither of these two lenses are good value for money, and both of them are incredibly expensive, and I would only ever recommend these two lenses to professional photographers that earn a lot of money with their job. They're just very, very expensive. Even on the second-hand market, both these two lenses are still well over £2,000. So neither of these two lenses really deserve a check mark, but the 24-70 is just that little bit more better value for money. So that is what wins this round. Brilliant, and there we go, guys. So there is my lens shootout between the 24 and the 28-70, and let's have a look at the overall score. Well, the 24-70 comes in an overall score of 7 out of 10, where the 28-70, thanks to its larger size, heavier weight, and also no image stabilization, comes in a little bit less of just 5 out of 10. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't recommend it. It's just depending on who you are. Me, personally, I love that 24-70, and it's the lens that I personally purchased, simply because of that image stabilization and slightly smaller size and weight. For me, as a hybrid shooter that does filmmaking but also photography, it was a perfect fit. With a 28-70, thanks to its larger size, heavier weight, and also lack of image stabilization, it just didn't warrant the price point, especially as it's more expensive. But to be honest with you, I would recommend both of these lenses. I absolutely loved using them both. The 24-70 is definitely more of a well-rounded lens, but there's something special about that 28-70 f2 with that beautifully unique f2 aperture, and one of the best optically performing lenses I have ever used, including some prime lenses that are even more expensive than that. So I hope this video helped you out. Make sure to write down in the comments below what you think. Do you prefer the 28-70 or do you prefer the 24-70? Do you own one over the other, or do you own both? I'd love to own both, but I certainly don't have a bank account that would allow that. So yeah, highly recommend the 24-70, but also the 28-70. I've been James for Photo Fever, and I'll catch you guys next time.